Jonathan's disappointment in not getting his way only deepened when I married Dr. Doug Weiss, who has been such a blessing to me, the rest of my family, and Daystar.
They just said, no, Mom, we really want to do this. So,
I never thought I'd say this, but Joni Lamb has lost everything. And I'm still trying to wrap my head around how fast it all happened. One day she's on top, untouchable, glowing, commanding an empire built on faith and trust. The next it's gone, collapsed, like a house of cards in a gust of wind no one saw coming. I followed her for years. We all have, haven't we? Joni wasn't just a name in Christian media, but she was Christian media. Daystar, the network, the brand, the woman. For a long time they were one and the same. And now it's all unraveling right in front of us. She used to stand there with such grace, such presence, hosting her show with a warmth that made people feel seen, heard, understood. That voice, that smile, it carried so much weight, so much comfort. People tuned in for hope, for answers, for strength. And Joni delivered over and over again. But something changed, slowly at first, almost imperceptibly. A crack in the veneer here, a flicker of tension there. Maybe we ignored it. Maybe we didn't want to see it. But now it's undeniable. There's a hollowness in her voice, a stiffness in her posture. The smile? It doesn't quite reach her eyes anymore. The woman who once exuded confidence, certainty, divine purpose, she's fading. And not just from the screen, from everything. You have to understand, this isn't just a career setback. This is a total unraveling. Joni Lamb didn't just run a show. She built an empire. She crafted a brand that was synonymous with faith, with healing, with power. She had the jet-setting lifestyle, the influence, the aura. People admired her. People trusted her. She was invited into homes across the world, not just as a broadcaster but as a spiritual leader. And now all of that feels like a memory, a long-forgotten dream. It didn't used to be this way. Not that long ago she was flying high, literally, traveling the world, making high-profile appearances, sitting across from ministers, politicians, celebrities. Her show wasn't just another program, it was a platform, a movement. Joni had presence. She could shift conversations, shape narratives, stir hearts. You don't get that kind of influence by accident. But power like that, it's fragile. And when it cracks, the sound is deafening. No one knows exactly what happened behind closed doors. Not yet. But whispers are turning into rumors, and rumors are starting to resemble truth. There's something deeper at play here. Something more than just bad PR or a temporary dip in ratings. This feels foundational. Like the very ground she built her world on is crumbling beneath her feet. You could feel the shift. At first, it was subtle. Just a few changes here and there, a new face beside Joni, a few awkward silences, a missing voice. But now, looking back, it all points to one thing. The moment everything started to unravel was the day Joni Lamb married Dr. Doug Weiss.
Jonathan's disappointment in not getting his way only deepened when I married Dr. Doug Weiss, who has been such a blessing to me, the rest of my family, and Daystar.
Less than 2 years after Marcus passed, it wasn't just a shock, it was a gut punch.
Your dad left sooner than we thought he would go. But before he left, he put himself in you. The most important part of your father's legacy is you. And even though he's in heaven, he lives here through you. You're the future of Daystar, Joni, and all of you. And the best days for Daystar Network are just ahead.
To the viewers, to the staff, to those who had followed her for years, even decades. And above all, to her son, Jonathan. He had always been close to Marcus, worked with him, admired him, carried his vision. He was more than just a son. He was the heir to the ministry, the natural continuation of all Marcus had built. But with Doug's arrival, all of that changed. Doug wasn't just a new husband. He became something else entirely, a new figurehead. A presence. A voice that began to speak louder and louder within Daystar's walls. He was on air beside Joni, giving advice, sharing scripture, preaching. And as time went on, it felt like Doug wasn't filling a space, he was replacing one. Replacing Marcus. And that's when the divide began. For Jonathan, it wasn't just grief anymore. It was disorientation. He was watching the ministry his father had poured his life into slowly morph into something unfamiliar. He was watching his mother hand over leadership, not to him, not even to a trusted elder in the faith, but to someone new. Someone who hadn't built it. Someone who hadn't bled for it. Doug Weiss. Jonathan had grown up in the ministry. He hosted, preached, supported every move his parents made. Daystar wasn't just a platform, it was home. His life. His calling. But now his role was diminishing. His presence on air became less frequent, then absent altogether. And people noticed. They started asking, where is Jonathan? Why wasn't he part of the broadcasts anymore? Why wasn't he standing beside his mother? And while Joni smiled, carried on, posted pictures, and praised her new chapter, Jonathan's silence said more than any post ever could. Behind the scenes, the tension was thick. Doug was becoming more than just Joni's husband. He was stepping into leadership, making decisions, reshaping programming, steering the network into a new direction, one that felt less like Marcus and more like Doug. He introduced counseling shows, new formats, his own ideas. And each move felt like another step away from the original heart of Daystar. The mission, the ministry, the soul. Jonathan saw it. He tried to speak up. But Joni, swept up in her new relationship, didn't want to hear it. She defended Doug. Even when close friends and longtime staff warned her that things were changing, too fast and in the wrong direction, she stood by him. She believed this was God's doing. That Doug was a gift, a second chance. That he could help her heal, lead, and rebuild after Marcus's death. But in reality, that decision cost her everything. Jonathan wasn't just hurt. He felt abandoned, ignored, replaced. And the more Doug took on, the more Jonathan pulled away. He stopped showing up to family events, skipped broadcasts, withdrew from the spotlight entirely. The family that had once stood together in unity, in prayer, in purpose, was now fractured. The silence between them was loud, deafening. And the viewers? They felt it too. Daystar began to feel different, colder. The warmth was gone. The chemistry was gone. And as Doug's voice grew louder, Marcus's legacy began to feel like a whisper. The ministry that once stood as a beacon of faith, family, and unity was becoming unrecognizable. Donors started pulling back. Pastors distanced themselves. Longtime viewers stopped tuning in. And the comments, online, in person, on broadcasts, grew heavier, sharper. Where is Jonathan? Why does Doug have so much power? What happened to the Daystar we trusted? And through it all, Joni kept smiling, as if nothing had changed. But everything had. The unity was gone. The heart was fractured. The ministry had become a business. Staff members whispered about Doug's growing influence, about Jonathan being edged out, about decisions being made without consensus. And at the center of the storm was Joni, caught between a legacy she once helped build, and a new chapter she insisted was from God. But what she didn't see, or refused to see, was that in defending Doug she was losing everything else. Her son, her team, her viewers, her identity. Daystar used to feel like home. Now it felt like a stranger. And the people who had once gathered in faith, who had trusted the Lamb family with their prayers, their money, their loyalty, they were walking away. Quietly. Heartbroken. The family divide started with one decision. The marriage. But it didn't end there. It grew. It festered. And now it's a fracture too deep to fix. Joni lost her son. The family lost its unity. And Daystar lost its soul. What happened to the family we once believed in? What happened to the woman who stood strong, led with conviction, and carried a ministry through global storms and personal trials? No one knows for sure. Because the silence? It's still growing. And for many, the Daystar they once loved is already gone. At first, people stayed quiet. They saw Joni smiling and they assumed that was enough. She looked happy. She said she was blessed. So they tried to support her, tried to celebrate her finding love again after such unimaginable loss. But underneath all the congratulations and carefully worded comments, something was off. And over time the cracks started to show. It wasn't just about the remarriage, not really. It was about what came after. The shift. The silence. The slow disappearance of Jonathan. 4 years he had been a fixture at Daystar, hosting shows, working side by side with Marcus, carrying the weight of the network's future on his shoulders. He wasn't just Marcus's son. He was his partner, his reflection, his spiritual heir. But then Doug Weiss entered the picture and everything started to change. Quietly at first. Jonathan stopped showing up. Fewer broadcasts. No appearances at major events. His voice, once strong and steady, fell silent. And the viewers noticed. They began to ask the questions no one wanted to say out loud. Where was Jonathan? Why wasn't he standing beside his mother? Why did it feel like someone, was missing? Behind the scenes, things were even worse. Doug wasn't just a supportive husband. He was stepping in forcefully, into the space Marcus once held. Making decisions. Offering advice on air. Preaching. Leading. And with every move, Marcus's legacy grew quieter. Smaller. Like it was being pushed out of the frame pixel by pixel. To Jonathan it was personal. Daystar was his father's life's work. His legacy. Their shared ministry. And now it was slipping away right in front of him. Doug, a man who hadn't been there when the foundation was laid, who hadn't built alongside Marcus, was suddenly acting as the new head of the house. And not just the house, the altar. Joni introduced Doug as her covering. In Christian circles, that word isn't casual. It means spiritual authority, protection, guidance, headship. It's sacred. It's weighty. And for many, hearing Doug described that way felt wrong. It was as if Marcus had been erased. Some of the viewers didn't have the words for what they were feeling, but they knew something had shifted. Something real. Something that went beyond marriage or titles. Inside Daystar, staff began to feel it too. Some left quietly. Others were let go. Longtime employees, people who had built their lives around the ministry, found themselves replaced or reassigned. There were whispers. Private conversations in corners. Words like branding and restructuring started to replace words like mission and calling. Doug brought in his own ideas. More counseling content. A new vision. A stronger focus on personal development, psychology, self-help. It wasn't necessarily bad, but it wasn't what Daystar had always been about. It felt like Marcus's foundation was being remodeled without permission. And to those who remembered how it all started, how Daystar was birthed in prayer and sacrifice, it felt cold. Misaligned. Jonathan saw it happening. He tried to speak up, but it felt like his voice didn't matter anymore. His mother wasn't listening, not really. She believed in Doug. Believed he was God-sent. That he was part of the plan. A gift for a new season. But for Jonathan it didn't feel like a gift. It felt like loss. Loss of his father's ministry. Loss of the family's unity. Loss of the platform they had built together. And as Doug became the face beside Joni, Jonathan slipped further and further into the background. Until finally he was gone. No more broadcasts. No more posts. No more family photos. The silence said what words couldn't. And the viewers, those who had once felt like part of the Lamb family, began to feel it too. The connection was breaking. The warmth was fading. Daystar, once so rooted in faith and unity, now felt like a brand. A business. A performance. Donations started to dip. Viewership declined. Social media comments grew more pointed. People weren't just confused, they were hurt. Disappointed. They felt abandoned by a family they had trusted. Supported. Prayed for. They asked, why did Joni move on so quickly? Why did she marry Doug? Why is Marcus's legacy being replaced? But Joni didn't answer. She posted pictures. Smiled. Carried on. As if the storm behind her wasn't real. But it was real. The Lamb family was fractured. The ministry was off course. And the people who once tuned in to feel a sense of peace and belonging, now tuned in and felt nothing at all. Doug had taken the spotlight. And with each passing day, Marcus's vision became a shadow. Jonathan's voice became an echo. And the empire that was once built on faith, love, and unity, it began to crumble. Quietly, slowly, painfully. This wasn't a scandal. It wasn't explosive. It was worse, it was subtle. A slow erosion. A quiet fall. Daystar, once a symbol of spiritual strength, now stood as a cautionary tale of what happens when legacy is left unguarded, when grief is rushed, when new beginnings are written too quickly over old foundations. And through it all, the question still lingers. What happened to the family we believed in? And is there any way back? If this video added value for you, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to help us reach a wider audience.